This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alex Masford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the show. If you are a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. Before I start talking anything sports, I want to remind you all of a couple of things. First of all, please do not forget to subscribe to the podcast if you aren't already. You can subscribe to the podcast on whatever application or a website you're listening to this on, Spotify, Podbean, Apple Podcasts if you're listening to it on that. On, again, whatever device you're listening to this on, a website, on your phone, on your laptop, on your watch, on whatever you may be listening to this on, please subscribe to the podcast if you aren't subscribed already. You want to subscribe to the podcast for a couple of reasons, but the main one being you get those alerts and notifications on that device, your phone, laptop, or watch, and you know when we drop a new episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast when we do, and again, you'll get those alerts and those notifications, and you can be one of the first people to listen to a new episode of the podcast when we release it here at the GSMC Sports Podcast team. Again, please subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Also, if you'd like to leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review in general, we would really appreciate it if you are enjoying the content and discussion points we are talking about on the show. You can do that, again, on whatever website, application you're listening to this on. If you could leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review in general, we would really appreciate it. And finally, the final thing you guys should also do is follow us on all social media platforms. We talk a lot of sports over on there. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram is where you can primarily follow us. Again, we love to talk sports over on there, so please give us a follow on all social media platforms. We'd love to just interact with you guys more in general, talk about anything you guys really want sports-related on social media. So again, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram is where you can primarily follow us, so make sure you give us a follow on all of those great platforms. Before I continue, I just want to say I hope wherever you are and however you may be listening, you and your family are having a happy and safe, hopefully, holidays. Christmas is around the corner, and then, of course, New Year's. A lot of sports to talk to today. The NBA season, training camps are on their way. The NBA season, when I'm recording this, is probably about 2 weeks away, about 2 or 3 weeks away from opening night on December 22nd. Going to be a lot of fun. Cannot wait for that. I'm going to talk a little bit of NBA at the end. Some James Harden rumors. He finally reported to Houston, but apparently he's telling Houston that he's open to a trade with some couple of other teams. I want to give you a team that I think should heavily pursue James Harden. That's coming on at the end of the episode. But of course, today's episode is going to be dominated with the National Football League. The season is entering the final stages. 4 more games for every team. December is the real month of the NFL regular season. Playoff pushes. We know what teams are good, what teams are bad. I'll try to get to every major NFL storyline this episode, and then again, talk about that James Harden stuff at the end of the episode. So the first thing I want to talk about is the situation going on between Carson Wentz, Jalen Hurts, and the Philadelphia Eagles, and where things stand currently. While there were definitely a ton of things in the NFL this week that I want to get to, Cleveland, the Giants, the Dolphins, the Patriots, the Bills, I want to get to a lot. I think the number one takeaway I had was which is what would happen in Philadelphia, and it was close. I loved everything that Cleveland did, and we'll get into all that. But I think what's going on right now in Philadelphia, it might be the most interesting storyline in the NFL. So, the last episode I did, I said that even though I was a big Carson Wentz fan, still is as a person. Carson Wentz is a great guy. And I really was a fan of his game heading into this year. I did multiple segments arguing that he was better than Dak Prescott, and it wasn't close. Again, Carson Wentz has played absolutely terrible this year, leads the league in turnovers. I think he's got 16 interceptions now. And I said at the end of the my last episode that I did that it was time for Philadelphia to move off of Carson Wentz. They drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round. I liked Jalen Hurts at Alabama. I liked him at Oklahoma, and I think if Tua Tagovailoa didn't exist, he would have obviously stayed at Alabama and still had a successful career there. It was time to see what do you have, right? Jalen Hurts is a second-round pick at quarterback. Could have argued he should have been late first, depending on the team. So he obviously deserves a shot, and they said that they were giving him more reps than ever. So I thought it was time for a Philadelphia and Carson Wentz mutual split. So I was almost ahead of this a little bit. So this most recent Sunday, they play the Green Bay Packers in a very big game for Philadelphia, trying to keep their season alive, and they go down, I think it was 20-3. Carson Wentz had played terrible, hadn't made pretty much any of his throws, didn't do anything super impressive. And Jalen Hurts enters the game, and immediately there's a spark in the offense. This happens all the time in the NFL. Veteran goes down or gets benched. The young rookie comes in, and it always seems to happen. The rookie does well. Tua Tagovailoa wins his first start against the Rams. Justin Herbert comes in for the injured Tyrod Taylor and almost beats the Kansas City Chiefs, right, and takes the game for a long time. Baker Mayfield comes in for Tyrod Taylor in Cleveland, comes back and wins the game, right? This happens all the time in the NFL. So Jalen Hurts naturally comes in, provides a spark, throws a touchdown and a pick, but eventually cut it to a one-score game at one point before Aaron Rodgers and more specifically Aaron Jones iced the game and put it away. So Philadelphia lost. Then immediately, as soon, I tweeted this out, as soon as Carson Wentz got benched and Jalen Hurts came in and threw the touchdown, I tweeted, and I still believe it, Carson Wentz just lost his job. From that point on, Carson Wentz was never going to take a snap for the Philadelphia Eagles ever again, assuming Jalen Hurts is healthy. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And it finally came out today. As I'm recording this, it literally just happened about 15 minutes ago. According to Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, everybody, Doug Peterson has already named, it's Tuesday today, the starter for the Philadelphia Eagles against Taysom Hill and the New Orleans Saints this Sunday. It's going to be Jalen Hurts. And this was coming. There was a spark immediately when Hurts came in the offense. Hurts clearly moves a little bit better than Wentz, a little bit more of a dual threat. And that team doesn't have a lot of weapons, so creating on your own is something that's going to be beneficial for the Philadelphia offense. And they want to see what they have in Jalen Hurts, because then it's all likely that Philadelphia Eagles going to have a top 10, maybe even top 5 pick if they keep losing. And at that point, you got to consider drafting a quarterback as Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields if you can trade up. You won't be able to get Lawrence, obviously. So it was bound to happen. And again, I wasn't necessarily surprised when Hurts came in. Wentz was struggling. But I was almost ahead of this a little bit. I told you that most likely that Hurts was going to get a chance as soon as Carson Wentz made his next mishap, and that's what he did. He was getting blown out by the Green Bay Packers. Doug Peterson, who was probably as loyal to Wentz as you could be in that situation. A lot of coaches in this league would have benched Wentz, after 5 games of the year, after 6 games. He waited all the way till, week 12 at this point, to give Jalen Hurts a shot. He'll be the start of the rest of the year, and now it's a 4-game audition for Jalen Hurts to the Philadelphia coaching staff that'll probably remain. I expect Doug Peterson to keep his job. I think Howie Roseman definitely deserves to keep his job. I think he's one of the better GMs in the league. It's a 4-game audition for Jalen Hurts. They're not going to make the playoffs or anything. Just prove to the Philadelphia Eagles why, instead of whatever pick they have, let's say it's 8, why they should take an offensive lineman, or why they should take a receiver or a defensive player instead of Zach Wilson or Trey Lance or Justin Fields if he drops or something like that. So it's a 4-game audition for Jalen Hurts, and it's going to be a separation between Wentz and Philadelphia. So first, I want to talk about what's going on with Carson Wentz before I get into what's the next sort of step. I've already told you what I think the perfect matchup between Carson Wentz and his future in the NFL would be, and I think it's the Indianapolis Colts, and I still believe that, and I'll give you what I think a potential trade package could look like in a second here. But if you don't maybe, watch football intently, or if you didn't watch the Philadelphia Eagle game, you might be wondering what the hell happened to Carson Wentz. What happened between, 2017 or 2018, where he looked like the best quarterback in football? You could make the argument that the year the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl, Carson Wentz looked like the best quarterback in football before tearing his ACL. After that, gets replaced by Nick Foles, who wins the Super Bowl. There's the chatter, who should they go with, Foles or Wentz? They reward Wentz, give him the contract. Played pretty decently last year, made the playoffs, almost won a playoff game if he didn't get a concussion. Nick Foles came in, still played pretty well. And as soon as they get rid of Nick Foles, they draft Jalen Hurts. And it was almost the pressure that apparently got to Carson Wentz was he finally thought that he redeemed himself and proved himself that he was better than Nick Foles, and they immediately drafted a backup QB. Now, I did not criticize the the Jalen Hurts draft pick in the second round. I thought it was a Not the decision I would have made. I would have picked a wide receiver in the first round, Justin Jefferson or something like that. But I understood where they were coming from. Wentz gets hurt a lot, and Philadelphia plays in a division where a backup quarterback can win you a game. At the time, everybody assumed the Giants were terrible, and Washington was terrible, and the Cowboys are always a question mark. So you want to have a good backup quarterback if your quarterback constantly gets hurt and you don't play in a great division. So I understand the pick, and of course you could also use him in the Taysom Hill type role if you really wanted to or something like that. So that's what they were sort of doing. But at the end of the day, Carson Wentz could not handle having that backup. And I think that is the main reason why Carson Wentz did not perform to the level he used to anymore. I think Carson Wentz always felt like he had a target on his back, that he always had to perform, or, it wasn't going to be able to, he was going to get replaced, and there was always somebody breathing down their neck. Now, there's been plenty of quarterbacks who have gone through that and elevated. Guys like Tom Brady had Jimmy Garoppolo. Tom Brady wins a Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers this year has Jordan Love, and obviously is having potentially a career year and probably an MVP season and potentially another Super Bowl on the way. So, again, the elite quarterbacks in this league aren't fazed by that pressure, and that's something that bothers me with Carson Wentz is he didn't respond accordingly to when Nick Foles was breathing down his neck, and now Jalen Hurts, who was a rookie, breathing down his neck too. He couldn't handle that pressure. But when you watch Carson Wentz play, I think he was forcing a little bit too much. Yes, Philadelphia doesn't have the proper weapons to maybe completely evaluate him, and I don't think all of the interceptions are necessarily his fault. A lot of them come from when the team is already down and he's trying to make a play. But if you watch Carson Wentz, I looked at the tape the past couple of days, he doesn't set his feet when he throws. Every single time Carson Wentz makes a throw, his feet are pointing in almost the wrong direction. Not only that, he seems to be always backpedaling, and he never seems to just finally set his feet, square his shoulders, and deliver a throw. And at that point, it's just football 101. That's what quarterbacks learn in elementary school, in your local Pop Warner League. When you're a quarterback, set your feet, square your shoulders, and throw. And Carson Wentz doesn't do that. He kind of throws out there like he's playing catch or backyard football, constantly backpedaling and throwing, and that's what leads, to the improper plays. You can get away with that in high school, maybe. You can't get away with that in college, and you can clearly not get away with it in the NFL. He's throwing 15 interceptions through 12 weeks. So that's what's going to happen, and he just seems pressed. And what does Carson Wentz need? He needs a hard reset. He needs a change of scenery, and he needs to go back to his roots. And where was Carson Wentz at his best? Frank Wright, who is now the head coach of who was the offensive coordinator with the Philadelphia Eagles the year Carson Wentz should have won MVP, in my opinion, and obviously should have won the Super Bowl and Super Bowl MVP if he didn't tear his ACL. And, of course, everything happened with Nick Foles after that. Frank Wright knows how to get the best out of Carson Wentz. Can the best version of Carson Wentz ever return? That remains to be seen. But if anybody can do it, it's going to be Frank Wright. And Phillip Rivers has some sort of injury with his foot, which is he's not going to get surgery until after the season. And I find it really hard to believe after the season Phillip's having is probably as best he's going to get. It's hard to me imagine that Phillip Rivers doesn't retire at the end of the season. Obviously, Indianapolis is in the middle of a playoff race and a divisional race. They're going to make the playoffs or they're just going to miss it, meaning they're not going to get the greatest draft pick in the world. So then you're looking at a guy like, Mac Jones, maybe Kyle Trask, or I expect Chris Ballard, Frank Wright to go after a guy. Matt Stafford comes to mind. Obviously, some of these other guys as well. Jimmy Garoppolo, if he's freed up, comes to mind. But I think Frank Wright knows Carson Wentz, knows he can work in his system. And again, Carson Wentz just needs a hard reset. Again, Frank Wright knows everything that Carson's good at, needs to almost go back to football 101 camp, get him related, with a guy he already is familiar with, and get his confidence back up. Carson Wentz just looks like a guy to me whose confidence is completely shot. He's not trusting what he sees from the defense. He's second-guessing everything he does, and he ends up panicking and either taking a sack, getting hit while he's thrown, or again, just not setting his feet. Simple stuff like setting your feet and squaring your shoulders could be the difference between an incompletion and a touchdown. Seriously, that's how it works. You see these simple overthrows and underthrows he's getting, these interceptions that just look wildly bad, and he's just not on the same page with the entire Philadelphia Eagles organization right now. So a split is coming. The Colts make the most sense. The issue with Carson Wentz is his contract. Now Indianapolis is one of the few teams that could take on a contract, but I don't think this is a trade where Philadelphia is expecting to get some sort of asset. And in my opinion, a trade would look something along the lines of Carson Wentz and a 4th-round pick for a conditional 6th or 7th. I think that's how low Carson Wentz's value is. But if you're Indianapolis, I think it's worth the risk, because who's better on the market right now? Maybe if Matt Stafford becomes available, you could argue he's better, but it wouldn't surprise me if the new regime in Detroit would like to keep Stafford and draft him some weapons or some defensive players, depending on who the next head coach is. Again, Jimmy Garoppolo is injury prone. Do you really want to trust him? But Carson Wentz behind a good offensive line, Indianapolis. Maybe they draft a receiver or sign a guy like Allen Robinson as well. They already have Pittman there, T.Y. Hilton, who's a little bit on the decline, one of the better offensive lines in football. A promising young running back in Jonathan Taylor, who needs to develop a little bit more, and I think they have a great defense. I think that could be a situation where Carson Wentz could thrive in, assuming Frank Reich just gets him back to the basics. He needs to improve on reading his defenses, and he needs to improve, again, setting his feet, squaring his shoulders, and delivering the ball. If he can do that, I think Indianapolis is the perfect match for them, and I think Indianapolis gets a potential, boom or bust sort of thing, low risk, high reward. Worst case scenario, Carson Wentz isn't great, you're probably mediocre because the roster's so well, and you draft a guy next year or do the same thing with a Stafford or somebody else. But at the best, you have, if Frank Reich can get Carson Wentz to even 70% of what he was that MVP-esque type year, you're back in business and you're probably winning that division, because, again, I'm not sold on Tennessee Ryan Tannehill. He's having a good year again, but who knows how long that's going to last. And if you even get a Carson Wentz that can give you, 27 touchdowns and 11 picks instead of what he's got now, which is 20 and 15, something like that. Things can change overnight in Indianapolis, and they can become real contenders with that defense and a couple more weapons. So I think Frank Reich and Carson Wentz make a lot of sense to repair up together. Again, they have the cap space to do it. But if you're an Eagles fan and you really think you're going to get any sort of asset for Carson Wentz, I think you're mistaken there. Philadelphia also has to move off of Carson. He's officially the highest paid backup in NFL history. There's no reason to keep him on the roster. It's just that you have to find a team that's just willing to take the contract at that point. And if you have to attach a fourth, maybe even a third, you got to do what you have to do. Because in the NFL, if you have an expensive quarterback that is not playing well, if you're playing a guy $25+ million and he stinks, that's the death sentence in the NFL. You're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to improve, and that's how you get stuck on mediocrity forever and ever and ever in the National Football League. So again, Philadelphia knows that. Howie Roseman is a high intellectual GM, a good drafter. He'll move off of Carson Wentz or do figure something out with the cap, but I think his days in Philadelphia are over. It's going to be interesting to see Jalen Hurts over the next 4 games. Can he prove? Again, the flip side of this coin is Hurts has a month, the month of December, to prove to the Philadelphia organization why they shouldn't take Zach Wilson with the 5th, 6th, or 7th overall pick or trade up for a Justin Fields, and instead they should draft a guy like a Jamar Chase or something for him to improve on. It's going to be interesting to see. Can't say I can guarantee you that Jalen Hurts will be the quarterback for the Eagles next year, but come back to me in about a month after he plays these next 4 games. Either way, the Philadelphia situation is fascinating, and I really, really hope Carson Wentz ends up on the Colts next year. It would be an absolutely fascinating storyline, and Carson's a good guy. I want him to succeed. All right, that's going to do it for this segment. On the other side of this short break, we'll get into some more NFL storylines, primarily what's going on with the Cleveland Browns. Have they finally turned a corner? And who deserves the most credit for how Cleveland's doing right now, Baker Mayfield or Kevin Stefanski? We'll get into all that good stuff right after this short break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Masfer. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the GSMC Sports Podcast. If you're a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. I just finished talking about everything Philadelphia Eagles, the Carson Wentz situation. And again, I think there's an inevitable split here. I doubt that Carson Wentz starts another game for Philadelphia. Even if Jalen Hurts doesn't play great, I think they're still going to go with him. They need to see what they have in Jalen Hurts because they need to know if they should be drafting a quarterback next year in the NFL draft. And at the end of the day, I think I don't know if they're going to draft a new QB, but I definitely think they're going to move off of Carson Wentz, and it'll be time to see how he can do maybe in a new location. The Colts are really the only team that kind of makes sense to me. Unless Big Ben retires after this year, I can maybe see the Steelers going after him, but I doubt it. They'll probably look towards the draft or a guy maybe like Sam Darnold, maybe even a little bit younger. But again, the Colts are obviously in win-now mode, as they should be. I think they have a really great roster. I think they have an incredible GM, Chris Ballard, and I really like their head coach, Frank Wright, as well, who seems to be the key to Carson Wentz's success. So we'll see if they can maybe match up again in Indianapolis, how it could go. I want to transition now to, I think, what was my initial takeaway before the Carson Wentz benching, had to be what happened with Cleveland. So Cleveland absolutely dominated, at least the first half, the Tennessee Titans. They ended up winning 41-35. Baker Mayfield easily had the best game of his career, 25 of 33, 334 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Hasn't thrown a pick in a while now. I think it's been about 3 or 4 games since he's done so. And this is big for Baker Mayfield. So Baker Mayfield's obviously having, at least his definition has to be of a breakout season. Definitely to having a lot better of a year than he did last year. And Cleveland's 9-3. They're going to have their first winning record in a long time. They are definitely going to make the playoffs, in my opinion. I don't see a way that they lose out and not make it. I think they're a better team than Baltimore right now, and I think they would make it. And I honestly think they'd give Pittsburgh a run for their money. I don't think Pittsburgh is as good as people believe. Obviously, they just lost their first game. I'll get into that probably later on in the episode as well. But Baker Mayfield is only 25 years old, and I think he's proving this season that he is the franchise quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. If he's proved nothing else this year, he's definitely proved that. I don't know if he's necessarily proved he's a top 10 quarterback in football or a top 15 QB or a Super Bowl winning quarterback, but I think he's the franchise quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. This year, he has 21 touchdowns, only 7 picks. He threw last year. That's an improvement. So let's just break it down, right? Rookie year, Baker Mayfield throws 27 touchdowns, 14 picks. 2019, he regresses, 22 touchdowns, 21 picks. With a month left to go in the season, he's already got 21 touchdowns and 7 picks. I expect he'll probably throw for a career high in touchdowns, career low in interceptions, and he's going to have a career year quarterback rating. So a career year for Baker Mayfield all around. He is the franchise quarterback for this team. But I think Kevin Stefanski is the one who deserves more credit than anybody else here. He has finally gotten his chance in Cleveland. A lot of fans, and I think a lot of people in the organization, wanted him to be the Cleveland head coach last year. He has clearly identified what's the strength of his football team, right? And I think the basic level for a really good head coach in this league is identifying what it is your team does well and using it to their strength. You look at the great coaches around this league, it's not a completely complex game strategy when it comes to, Andy Reid, right? What is Andy Reid's team good at, right? They have Patrick Mahomes, and they have incredible weapons, specifically Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Every single week, Andy Reid finds a way to get the ball to Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. And Bill Belichick this year, in arguably one of his better coaching jobs, has identified this team, all they can really do is run the football. So what does he do? He runs the hell out of the football. Some of these coaches in this league who have specifically gotten fired recently, Matt Patricia, Adam Gase, Greg Williams, some of these other guys, they're too cute with it. They develop strategies to, complex the defense. Oh, we got to get it to our lesser involved guys. We got to get it to our backup running back or our blocking tight end on a trick play to keep the defense off guard. If you have talented players, use them. And if you can't find a way to get them the ball, specifically on offense, that's a you problem and that's a coaching issue. So I really do believe that Kevin Stefanski has realized that the strength of his football team is the run game and the offensive line. And what he did and what he's been doing all season, maybe not necessarily against Tennessee, I know they threw the ball a lot, but what they know is that they have a ton of good running backs, both Chubb and Hunt. They have an incredible offensive line. You could argue the best offensive line in football, so they run the hell out of the ball. And what does that lead to? Eventually a team like Tennessee stacks the box in the first half, and Cleveland can finally, open the field, throw the ball, and Baker Mayfield is really, really good at making the easy throws. He didn't do so necessarily 2 weeks ago, but this game against Tennessee, he made every throw he needed to make, had a career half and a career game, and I think definitely the best performance of Baker Mayfield's career was 100% against that Tennessee game. And you can hate on Baker Mayfield all you want. I don't think he's necessarily the best quarterback in the league. He has clearly changed his mentality this year. He looks more like a leader this year. He honestly looks more in shape this year. And I think last year, I don't think his throwing style changed, but he seems to throw the ball with a little bit more zip this year than last year. This year looks a lot like the Baker Mayfield we saw at Oklahoma. That was deadly accurate, would throw a ball with a ton of zip, a ton of velocity, and that offensive line and those weapons can't hurt either. I think another thing that Baker Mayfield tends to do is force the ball to Odell Beckham Jr. With Odell out, he shares the wealth a lot. Dominus People-Jones caught a touchdown. He gets the ball to Hooper, to Jarvis, even to his backs occasionally as well. He does a good job at distributing the ball. Baker Mayfield's almost like a point guard. Very similar to Kyler Murray, another Oklahoma quarterback. Does a really good job when the field's sort of spread out for him and, there's multiple guys he can go to. I really like what Baker Mayfield's doing this season. He's proving a lot of people wrong. Cleveland's going to make the playoffs. They're the number one wild card team. I don't think they're going to be able to catch Pittsburgh. That requires Pittsburgh losing 2 more games. Could they? Absolutely. I don't think Pittsburgh's as good as people think. But what I do know is that Cleveland's going to make the playoffs and they deserve it. Wouldn't surprise me if they went 11-5, hell, even 12-4. I really like this Cleveland Brown team. And I think they can win a playoff game. I really do believe that. They can win a playoff game on the road. You're telling me they can't go to, Buffalo and win a game in Buffalo potentially? I could see it. You tell me they can't go win a game in Tennessee or in Indianapolis? Totally. With that run game, 100%. The Cleveland Browns team is built for December. It's built for the playoffs. It's not this flashy, high-flying offense. It's going to ground and pound your team, and that's what they're doing. I like their defense, too. They didn't have a great second half against Tennessee. I'm going to give them a pass, though. They were up so much. It's only natural to let off the gas a little bit there. Would have been a disastrous, if they didn't, win the game, but they were in control for a majority of that game and obviously lit them up in the first half. So credit to Kevin Stefanski. I mentioned in my last episode with my award predictions that, the coaching is a two-team race. I want to apologize to Cleveland fans. 100% Kevin Stefanski, I think, specifically after that win in Tennessee, should be in the Coach of the Year conversation, if not leading it. I think, honestly, after Mike Tomlin loses that last game and Pittsburgh's not going to go 16-0, I think that would have been his main case for Coach of the Year. I think it's down to Flores and Kevin Stefanski, and maybe if Miami misses the playoffs, I'd give it to Stefanski. We're going to have to see how the season plays out. But Kevin Stefanski 100% deserves a ton of credit for how good Cleveland has been this year, and they've been a ton of fun to watch. I want to quickly get to another major takeaway. I'll spend a few minutes on this. Don't want to spend a lot of it. The way that the Jets lost, right? So there's, of course, the Raiders were pretty much, getting not necessarily dominated. Were definitely outplayed the entire game by the Jets. Comes down to the final play of the game, and Greg Williams, the defensive coordinator for the New York Jets, for whatever reason, decides to call a cover zero blitz with a QB spy on Derek Carr. And, of course, Henry Ruggs gets matched up against the slowest corner that the Jets have, takes them over the top on one-on-one coverage, no safety help. Derek Carr throws an excellent ball because there's no pressure, and all of a sudden, the Jets go from up 3 looking on their first win of the season up 4 to get their first win of the season to losing to the Las Vegas Raiders on an insane play. The Jets just find new ways to lose, man, and I know Adam Gase is fired at the end of the year. They fired Greg Williams the next day, I think mostly because of Marcus May's comments. The Jets, man, what else can you say? Here's the thing. I don't think NFL teams tank. I don't think players tank at all. I think when you're on an NFL roster, you play to win each and every game. I don't necessarily think coaches tank either. But if there's ever going to be a circumstance where, there can be an investigation open and there was proof of tanking in the NFL, it would have to be that play. I've never ever understand any argument on how Greg Williams could somehow call a cover zero QB spy blitz with no safety help one-on-one coverage on a Hail Mary play, essentially. I don't understand it. If I'm not about firing coaches mid-season. I don't think it really improves your football team unless you have a guy that somehow is going to the coordinator should have been the coach or whatever reason. Again, they're all on the same coaching staff. They all do relatively the same thing and follow each other. So I don't see how it improves your team. If there's ever been a fireable offense after something, though, it would have to be that. To call that play defensively is ridiculous. And I honestly, if Greg Williams is listening to this, I doubt he is. That's disrespectful to your team, right? That's disrespectful to your players to call something like that. Nobody in their right mind would ever call that play. And again, if there was ever an investigation that someone could somehow prove that there was real, tanking in the NFL, that whoever the owner of the Jets or the general manager of the Jets called down and said, call this so we don't win. Again, don't think it's true. I'm not buying into that conspiracy theory. I don't think players tank. I don't think coaches tank. But if there was ever a circumstances where it could be proven that somebody did, it would be that one. What an absolutely horrendous call from Greg Williams. And, of course, the Jets lose. Keeps the Raiders' playoff hopes alive. But if I'm Trevor Lawrence watching that, why would you... again, unless the Jets go out there and hire a Jim Harbaugh, who has been recently rumored to potentially look at another NFL job. If they're going to, hire a Jim Harbaugh or a Ryan Day or bring in your coach Dabo Sweeney, the Jets have to hit the coach job out of the park. Otherwise, if I'm Trevor Lawrence, I'm pulling an Eli and I'm not playing for that team. That organization's a complete dumpster fire. And I like their GM, Joe Douglas, but Jesus Christ, man. What we saw on Sunday against the Raiders is one of the most embarrassing moments in NFL history. And I think the only other one that it wouldn't top was maybe the butt fumble, which is another New York Jet play. But at the end of the day, the Jets just continue to find ways to lose. Those are my 2 cents on the Browns and Jets. We're going to take another short break here. On the other side of the break, I want to tell you why Bill Belichick is having an incredible year coaching-wise, if they should bring back Cam, and what do I think about the Bill Belichick coaching tree, how Brian Flores and Joe Judge are reviving that. And we'll try to get to some more NFL games as well, specifically the Buffalo game and maybe even some Pittsburgh. We're going to all that good stuff, as well as at the very end of the episode, some updates on some James Harden rumors. We're going to all that good stuff right after this short break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Again, I am your host, Alex Massford. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode and to be continuing to listen to the GSMC Sports Podcast. And if you are a returning listener, we really do appreciate you. I just finished talking about everything Cleveland Browns and also a little bit about the Jets. But again, the Cleveland Browns, man, what an absolute cultural turnaround this year for the Cleveland Browns. Again, that Freddie Kitchens hire looks like a disaster. Every single day it continues with how talented this Cleveland team is. And again, like I said at the beginning of the year, this was a make or break year for Baker Mayfield. And all he's done this year is make. I mean, he's having a career year in QBR. I'm expecting a career high in touchdown passes and a career low in interceptions. Again, a QBR rating, career high as well. And first, probably double-digit win Cleveland year since, the 90s, maybe even before. Expecting that from him as well. And I think he could win a playoff game. I really do believe that. And the Browns could be contenders, seriously. It's just going to ride on Baker Mayfield. The Browns have a Super Bowl roster when you think about it. Top 3 offensive line in football. Definitely the best running back room in football. Top 15 defense at least, if not better. It's down to the quarterback play, and Baker Mayfield's been great this year, so really excited for Cleveland. Cleveland fans deserve it, man. Going through an 0-16 season, 1-15 season, I mean, I don't know if any sports fans have had it worse than the Cleveland Brown fans, so it's good to see that turnaround. And again, I think, Baker Mayfield's been great. I think it starts with coaching, and I think Kevin Stefanski should be right up there with everybody else in the Coach of the Year conversation. Wasn't as sold, but now that they beat a good team, Tennessee, a probably playoff team, Tennessee, that went to the AFC Championship game last year on the road, and they did it without even playing to their biggest strength, which is the run game. that's incredible job by Kevin Stefanski and the new owners, or not a new ownership, but new management in Cleveland, I should say. I want to transition now to two other teams that I think are on the rise, and a third one, the final thing I want to talk about in this segment, and it'll be done with my NFL talk, is probably where I've been most wrong in the NFL season. I think it's important to mention, when you're doing shows like this, where you were wrong on. I don't want to just harp on my correct predictions, but I want to give you something I was really wrong on too at the end of this segment. But I want to talk about one thing, and that's the Bill Belichick coaching tree. So Bill Belichick, I think, has been historically known as as the greatest coach of all time when it comes to football, but his coaching tree didn't translate to the ones that maybe Andy Reid has had, which I think everyone looks at Andy Reid as the best coaching tree, or Sean Payton, or Bill Parcells, or Jimmy Johnson, even Mike Leach, who's a college coach, has a pretty good coaching tree as well. So the coaching tree for Belichick, everybody said Belichick disciples don't work. We saw Eric Mangini not really work. Josh McDaniels, he's already back with Patriots. Matt Patricia just got fired. Bill O'Brien fired. But there's two guys that seem to be resurrecting the Bill Belichick coaching tree. I don't really count Mike Vrabel as the Bill Belichick coaching tree, even though he played for the Patriots. But if you want to include him, sure, I don't. There's two guys, and I want to talk about two of them because I think both of their teams are going to be very similar in the present now and for the future, and that's the New York Giants and the Miami Dolphins. There's two guys who I think, Bill Belichick owes, a dinner for resurrecting his coaching tree and his reputation of not having good assistant coaches. Joe Judge looks like a home run of a hire for the New York Giants, and we already know that Brian Flores was a home run of a hire for the Miami Dolphins. They're just 1 year apart. This Giants team this year reminds me a lot of what Brian Flores was doing in Miami last year, and I think a lot of people have made that comparison on Twitter and stuff as well. But again, the Giants started 0-5. I think have now won 5 of their last 7. They're probably going to win that division, assuming Washington doesn't catch them. And they're doing that without Saquon Barkley, and they're doing it with defense first. If you remember, the Miami Dolphins last year started 0-7, won 5 of their last 4, including a huge win over the New England Patriots that final week of the year. And they did it with defense. The defense was the reason why the Dolphins were winning games at the end of last year, and also some Fitzmagic as well. I'm seeing that with the New York Giants this year. The difference between the Dolphins last year and the Giants this year is that the Giants are going to make the playoffs because of how bad their division is. And I think Daniel Jones this year, specifically the last couple of weeks, I know he didn't play against the Seahawks. Obviously, they beat the Seahawks. That's the whole reason why I'm talking about them. I think Daniel Jones has proved, similar to Baker Mayfield, that he is the franchise quarterback for the New York Giants. They don't need to go out there and look for a Justin Fields, a Trey Lance, or a different guy or something like that. I think Danny Dimes is the guy moving forward, and Joe Judge looks like a home run of a pick. And here's why I think Brian Flores and Joe Judge have somehow revived the Bill Belichick tree. Everybody has said that you can't copy Bill Belichick, right? You can't do it. There's no replicating that success, even though in every other coaching tree, right, the Andy Reid coaching tree, Frank Reich copies a lot of what, and Doug Peterson as well, copy a lot of what, Andy Reid does. And Sean Payton's coaching tree, Bill Parcells, it's a lot of copycats. Copycat league, as a lot of people like to say. Brian Flores and Joe Judge are the two people who have actually copied Bill Belichick. I'll explain why. Bill O'Brien and Josh McDaniels potentially as well, and Matt Patricia, all copied, and Eric Mangini, the playing style of Bill Belichick. That's not what makes Bill Belichick special. What makes Bill Belichick special, besides his incredible football IQ and the X's and O, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Bill Belichick is not a good X's and O guy. Bill Belichick's a leader of men, and he gets his best out of his players. That's what Joe Judge and Brian Flores do. They're more leaders of men than X's and O guys. They don't put themselves above their players. They don't put themselves as, this intellectual hierarchy because they won championships with the Patriots. They humble themselves and they make themselves just like any other guy, and they prove it to their team. Did you see what happened on Sunday with Brian Flores? Jakeem Grant gets 2 cheap shots on a punt return. First guy out there to defend him is Brian Flores, and he wants to fight somebody. Now, Brian Flores will tell you after the game, very Belichick-like, that he should have kept his cool and not done that, and he hurt the team, and yada yada this and yada yada that. But his players responded. And he knows, and all the players know now, that Brian Flores has their back, and they will play hard for him. That's the difference. Did the Lions ever play hard for Matt Patricia? No. Did any of these guys with the Belichick tree, did their players ever, did the Texans play hard for Bill O'Brien? Absolutely not. So that's the type of thing that you got to copy Belichick on. These Belichick disciples need to not just copy, the X's and O's. Yes, both of them appear to be incredible defensive coaches, by the way. The Giants defense is incredible. Dolphins defense might be the best in the league, right? But they also seem to find a way to copy the personality. They talk all the same, in the post-game meetings, not, very monotone, not very energetic, not giving the media a lot to work with. But you know what they both do? They win games, and they turned around their teams like that. Within a year, the New York Giants have been turned around, and within a year, the Miami Dolphins have been turned around from stuck in mediocrity to potentially being on the brink of building something really, really special in Miami if Tua Tagovailoa is the quarterback that everybody expects him to be. So it's going to be really interesting to see those two guys moving forward. And again, Joe Judge, man, looks like a home run of a coach to go to Seattle with Colt McCoy as your quarterback, no Saquon Barkley, and to only allow Russell Wilson, who I thought was going to be the MVP at the beginning of the year, hold him to 12 points. I mean, that deserves some credit. I mean, they won't give Joe Judge, the coach of the year, similar to why they didn't give Brian Flores the coach of the year, because, again, the record doesn't show, blah, blah, blah. Maybe they don't even have a winning season. Maybe the Giants win the division at 7-9 or 9-7, right? Of course, they're not going to give, the 5-11 coach, which is what the Dolphins were last year, coach of the year. But both of those guys, you could argue that Brian Flores deserved it last year with their worst roster in the league going 5-4 down the stretch. And you can certainly make the argument that Joe Judge deserves this year, right? Slayton as their number one receiver. Ingram is inconsistent and hurt, right? Not a good offensive line. Saquon tears his ACL. The Giants have, there's every reason, and Danny Dimes is hurt now, right? There's been every reason for you to believe that the New York Giants could be, seriously, the worst team in football. You could argue that they've been given every reason to suck this year, and instead they're going to win the division. I mean, that's crazy stuff. New York Giants, home run of a hire. And if you notice, both of these guys, both Flores and Joe Judge were not coordinators. Matt Patricia was the defensive coordinator for the Patriots. Josh McDaniels is the offensive coordinator. So was Bill O'Brien. And so was Eric Mangini as well. But these two guys, Joe Judge was the special teams coordinator, and Brian Flores was just a defensive coach. I think he was just the linebacking coach at the time. Wasn't even the full-time coordinator, didn't even call the plays. But why? They're leaders of men, and they get the most out of their players. That's all they do. And not to mention the player development as well. Brian Flores' player development, ridiculous, as well as Joe Judge. Danny Dimes, the leap he's just made week by week, from being a turnover-prone quarterback to looking like a guy you could potentially win a playoff game or two with, ridiculous. The defense that the Giants have sort of improved on week by week, that defense gets harder and harder. If you would have told me at the beginning of the year that the New York Giants defense was going to hold Russell Wilson to 12 points, I mean, absolutely ridiculous stuff. Shout out Joe Judge and Brian Flores. Both of those guys are in the Coach of the Year conversation now. I mean, Brian Flores looks like a superstar head coach. The personality, the swagger, the grit, I mean, how fired up are you if you're a Dolphins fan of Brian Flores charging the field looking to fight somebody after his player takes a couple cheap shots? That's huge for free agency. Guys are going to want to play in Miami already. Now add a coach they want to play hard for. Don't be surprised if Miami makes some noise. Tua Tagovailoa having a great year. I'll talk a little bit more about the Dolphins in a second, but I want to focus on the Giants here for a second. What Joe Judge has done in these short months, in a COVID year as well, absolutely ridiculous. Joe Judge, home run hire. Awesome stuff coming from the New York Giants. And the league is better when the Giants, and also the Dolphins, but when the Giants are better, the league is better. It's really good to see everything with the New York Giants, man. That defense was playing out of its mind. They are a physical football team, and that's one of the things Joe Judge said, I think, in his opening press conference. They were going to play blue-collar, grit football, New York style, and that's exactly what they're doing. He's promised on every single thing, or he's delivered on every single promise that he had at the beginning of the year in that press conference, and a lot of people clown that hire, just like a lot of people clown the Brian Flores hire, and man, do they look stupid today. Home run hire for Joe Judge and the New York Giants. Awesome to see him doing well. And yeah, it looks like the Bill Belichick coaching tree is revived. I want to quickly talk about the Miami Dolphins. Now, this game was pretty uneventful. Aside from the scrap, I won't talk about it anymore. I just talked about how I believe on Brian Flores, charging the field, and I think it was good. I think his team will respond to that. But I do want to talk about Tua Tagovailoa's performance, because we quite literally saw Tua Tagovailoa's best game of his career. 26 of 39, 296 yards and a touchdown, no picks. Tua Tagovailoa now 4-1 as an NFL starter, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. Only a few guys have done that before. Only 3 quarterbacks have won at least 4 out of their first 5 starts. Big Ben, Dan Marino, Tua Tagovailoa, and Dak Prescott. Lee Company, if you ask me, looks really, really good for Tua Tagovailoa right now. I think he's a little bit underrated at this point, maybe because his stats aren't as good as Herbert's. But you have to remember, Tua Tagovailoa has 7 touchdowns, no picks, 4-1 as an NFL starter, with wins over the Rams and the Cardinals. Rams look like a perennial playoff team. Cardinals might be the same as well. One of them on the road. And he's doing that with Mac Hollins as his second best receiver, who was cut by the Bears last year, I think. And Jakeem Grant as his third best receiver. I'll go along with Lynn Bowden, who was a running back, converted wide receiver, quarterback in college, traded rookie, and Antonio Callaway coming off suspension. Devontae Parker's good, but I don't think anybody's arguing him to be a top 10 receiver. With no run game, Tua Tagovailoa is doing more than people believe. And yes, that defense is great, and yes, Flores is a rock star. But that offense, when they went on tempo, if you look at go look at the highlights of the Dolphins-Bengals games, what Chan Gailey finally did, which is what a lot of Dolphins fans have been pleading and begging for, is for them to open up the playbook for Tua Tagovailoa. They did that, went up tempo, and Tua finally threw for more than 25 times. And when you look at that, 296 yards and a passing touchdown, and that third quarter was one of the best quarters we've seen from a quarterback, period, in the NFL so far this year. Really good stuff from Miami Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa, and again, Brian Flores and Joe Judge, rock stars. And if Tua Tagovailoa keeps this up, Dolphins could make some noise, not just in the future, but right now. Win a playoff game, steal the division from Buffalo, who I'll talk about in about 2 minutes here. Really, really, really good stuff. Speaking of Buffalo, I got to admit where I was wrong, man. Josh Allen's a superstar. I thought he was not going to be good when he entered the NFL, and I thought everybody was overrating the hell out of him this year. I remember he was, I think, 5th in the MVP odds in Vegas, and I bashed Vegas saying that he's not that good, and I've said multiple times that he holds Buffalo back. I'm dead wrong, man. Josh Allen is clearly improved from year 2 to year 3. I didn't think quarterbacks could improve this much from accuracy from year to year. I thought accuracy was something you can't necessarily teach. Clearly you can, because Josh Allen had, I think, an 80% completion percentage, 32 of 40, 375 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Man, like, that's ridiculous type of stuff against Robert Saleh, who's a great defensive coordinator who's going to get hired as a head coach as soon as the season ends, man. When San Francisco is fighting for their season as well. Josh Allen, incredible game on Monday Night Football. Bills have a quarterback, man. He does not hold them back. I got to admit where I was wrong on that. I think it's important for people in this business to admit, when they've made some whiffs. I mean, it's easy to say the predictions you've got right, but I was wrong on Josh Allen, man. He's an absolute superstar. And, man, is that division, the AFC East, that's been a snooze fest the last 20 years because of Patriot domination, going to be fun for the next 15? Tua Tagovailoa, Brian Flores, and the Miami Dolphins. Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, and the Buffalo Bills. Most likely Trevor Lawrence and whoever the Jets hire, and Bill Belichick and whoever the next quarterback of the New England Patriots are going to be. That's going to be one of the most fun divisions to watch over the next, 5+ seasons. Can't wait to watch the AFC East going forward. All those teams are doing really, really well. All right, that's going to do it for this segment. We're going to take one final short break. For the final segment of today's show, I want to talk everything James Harden rumors. Where is he going? What's the latest update? Is he in Houston? Is he not? We'll get into all of that good stuff after this final short break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, and we are back here at the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network for the final segment of today's absolutely packed show. And I do want to get to some NBA news. The NBA season starting up really, really soon, but one of the remaining questions is, who the hell will James Harden be playing for next season? The rumors were really escalating a couple of weeks ago that he was going to end up in Brooklyn, and then all of a sudden they sort of cooled down, and then the Westbrook trade happens for John Wall, and the rumors are that, Harden preferred playing with Wall than with Westbrook, and it looked like he was going to stay, and then he hadn't reported initially to training camp, and he was being seen at clubs and everything like that as a COVID risk, and he finally reported today to Houston, so you would think everything would be okay, right? Well, wrong. Immediately when he landed, Woj also tweeted an article saying that he has given the Houston Rockets a list of teams that he would like to be potentially traded to if a trade is possible. Only one of them has been leaked besides Brooklyn, and that was the Philadelphia 76ers. That's a connection you can make really easily after Philly hired Daryl Morey, who was obviously running everything in Houston pre-James Harden. Pretty much after the season. He stepped down after this year and immediately went to Philadelphia. Here's the thing, though. They're the team that should be going after Harden more than anything. Brooklyn doesn't necessarily need him. Another team that's been rumored a lot is Miami. I don't necessarily see James Harden fitting into that culture. And not to mention they don't have a ton of first-round picks they can move in the future unless they get some protection changes. And again, do they really want to give up, Hero, Robinson, and picks way out in the future, talking like 2025 to 2027, because those are the only picks they got? Like, is that what you really want to do for a guy in James Harden who may or may not even fit your culture? I don't think so. So I don't expect James Harden to be in the Miami Heat or anything. Victor Oladipo, maybe. Giannis, and next year, maybe. Bradley Beal, maybe, but not Harden. But Philadelphia makes a ton of sense. Obviously, the Daryl Morey connection is obvious, but they also have assets they can move. They have picks they can move. They also have a guy in Ben Simmons that I think would make a lot of sense to be incorporated in a James Harden trade. Not that it was a failed experiment in Philadelphia, but you can certainly make the argument that Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid do not work together. A pick and roll of Harden and Embiid would be one of the best in the entire league. It would be absolutely ridiculous. At the end of the day, do I think it's going to happen? Potentially. I still think that Harden finds a way to the Brooklyn Nets. But Harden to Philadelphia makes a ton of sense for Philly. They immediately go from sort of middle of the pack in the East to arguably the best team in the Eastern Conference, maybe outside of Brooklyn, maybe Miami, but I don't know at that point. You get Doc Rivers, James Harden, Joel Embiid, could be nice. You could package, Simmons, a ton of picks in Matthias Thybulle, send them Houston's way. Houston's already filled with shooters in John Wall. You surround Ben Simmons with a ton of shooters in John Wall, and that could make a lot more sense. Simmons could flourish, and then you definitely have a cornerstone piece for Houston moving forward, and you have a franchise player in Ben Simmons. So I still think he is it. I think he is a franchise player. I just don't necessarily think he's Philadelphia's franchise player. I think that title belongs to Joel Embiid. I think Ben Simmons definitely needs his own team and some shooters. So I think it's a win-win on both sides. I don't think Houston's winning anything with Harden anymore, even if he does stay. Him and Wall are, I did a whole segment on how I think they could be even better than they were last year, but I don't think they're going to win a championship. I think the Lakers are far and away the best team in the Western Conference. Only team that even comes close is the Clippers, and I'm not even sure they come close. So at the end of the day, I think James Harden will not be playing for the Houston Rockets this season. I think he's given every indication, and he's making it tougher and tougher by the day. Where do I think he ends up? I still think he finds his way to Brooklyn. But where do I think he could end up? Philadelphia. And I think Philadelphia should be the team I think Philadelphia should be more aggressive going after James Harden than Brooklyn is. Brooklyn doesn't necessarily need him. They already have KD, Kyrie, Dinwiddie, LeVert, Allen, Jordan. They already have a set team that can clearly win a championship or at least go to the finals. Philadelphia doesn't have that. And they have question marks surrounding their team, and they're shooting all over the place. Getting a guy like James Harden for Ben Simmons, Thybulle, some picks, makes too much sense for Philadelphia, specifically with the Daryl Morey connection. I'd love to see it. Let me know where you think James Harden plays basketball next season. Can't wait for the NBA season to start talking about some games. We're going to go through about a 2-week period where we have, I think, still some regular season football left, then the playoffs, and then the start of the NBA regular season. That's going to be peak sports life. I cannot absolutely wait for that. Late December, also the Christmas season. It's going to be a fun end to the year. I know 2020 has been terrible, but hopefully we can end strong here, at least in the sports world, with some basketball and some football. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. That's going to do it for this one. Before I let you go, do not forget to subscribe to the podcast, follow us on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and leave us a 5-star review or just a positive review if you would like to do so. Again, I have been your host, Alex Masfer. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I will see you all in the next one.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.